You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling.
Hey, thank you guys today for joining us at Off the Mountain podcast. And we're actually back up on the mountain today. And it's beautiful up here. And we have a subject matter today that I think you're going to like. But before we get into it, today we have a little different crew with us.
We do.
Pastor Josh is gone and Pastor Tom is gone. And so we have Pastor Tom Hollenbeck. He's the campus pastor of our Northwest campus. And Pastor John Tweed and Vince and me.
Yep.
And we're the regulars, Vince, but the other guys are gone. And this might happen occasionally with vacations and everything that's going on. But today we have a topic, and I'm kind of anxious to get into it, and it's called pet peeves. Things that get on your nerves, things that get under your skin. Now, see, I was thinking this week that as Christians, our goal is to not let these things hinder our walk with God, and we're not supposed to let them disrupt our peace. Form a bias. Sometimes we can form biases based on these pet peeves. For example, I'm a member of a couple of gyms, and one of the gyms I go to, there's always this guy in there, and he has huge legs. He's always on the leg machine. And I mean, he spends half his day on the leg machine, so I nicknamed him Leg Boy. And so I tell my wife, I said, Leg Boy ruined my workout today. Why? Because Leg Boy took the leg machines all day today. Mm-hmm. And we're candid. We're honest on this podcast. And my wife said, you really think you should be referring to him as Leg Boy?
Leg Boy.
Yeah. And I'd come into the gym parking lot and go, oh, doggone it, Leg Boy's truck's here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get on my machine.
You know what his truck is. That's how far the pet peeve went.
Yes, yes. And I started thinking, do you think Jesus did this like, Religious Roy and Needy Nick and Promiscuous Peggy? And I don't think he did this.
Oh, man.
So anyway, we're going to get right in. I've already kind of fired in all cylinders right there at the beginning.
Yep.
And I'm not afraid of being honest. I mean, we're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I wasn't mean to the guy. I just found myself calling him a Leg Boy. And one day, like, God convicted me and said, is this really right? Is this, would you want to be called, I don't know, whatever?
Right.
So let's get into some of the pet peeves, because I have a list of a lot of pet peeves. And the whole idea of this podcast is not to be, a time for us to gripe and be grouchy and vent everything that makes us mad. Our idea today is to be honest about our pet peeves, and then be honest about what we're doing to correct that behavior that goes with those.
Yeah.
Because I do think it disrupts your peace sometimes, puts you in a grouchy mood.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right in today, and let's talk about some of our pet peeves. And if you guys don't talk about them, I got a whole list.
Yeah. I just, something that literally happened this morning. My daughter was trying to talk to me as she was eating her breakfast, and she was talking to me right in my ear. And as she's talking, she's also chewing. And I just, the slapping, the teeth colliding, I know everything that's happening inside of her mouth, and that's just too much information. So one of mine is definitely chewing, and I can't, for whatever reason, I can't stand it. But I feel like that's a common one.
That is a top theme for people. Like, you have a top pet peeves list, like the chewing and people chewing with their mouths wide open is like one of the top things where people will just like completely write you off. They get so, like you said, they give them nicknames where it's like they want to remove themselves so far from that person that it's like it bothers them.
It gets
to
on
their
your
core.
nerves. My dad did that. You
Yeah.
could hear his false teeth rattling, and he just chewed. And I just wanted to leave the table,
Yeah. And something like that, it's like, I don't know what it is. It gets into me. Like, it makes me feel uncomfortable inside. And it's not just in the ears, and it just drives me nuts. And, also trying to raise her to close her mouth when she's chewing. But it's just, I've got that. And then uncomfortably, I have a pet peeve when I'll be talking to somebody and they're checking their phone constantly,
I'm sorry.
and going back and forth, but going, okay, let's go to you.
I said, I'm sorry. Yeah. Cause I know I do this to people, but not on purpose.
But also, if somebody has something to say through a text message, but they send you text message and then another text message and another text message and another text message. Like, we were in a conversation the other day and I almost blocked you because I'm like, I can't deal with this. Send it in one big group chat. So those are just a few of mine.
I am the worst at that. Everybody knows if I'm texting them, because I won't put one thought down. It's like, I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. As I'm processing, I'm writing so that I don't forget my
I know
thoughts.
it's Vince without even going to my phone because I'll hear beep. Just keep going. I go, That's Vince.
Ding, ding, ding.
And you know what? Now I picked up that habit. I started doing that.
I'm sorry, Tom.
No,
the phone one's good though, because I think a lot of people, it's like I've told my wife, like, I've learned to multitask. Like, I can completely be listening to you, and I'm not looking. If I'm looking at my phone, like even on this podcast, we're looking at our phone for notes. But a lot of times, you might be saying something to me, and I'm like, oh, let me write that down, or let me say this. And to you might be like, you're looking at your email, or you're texting somebody. You don't care what I'm saying.
You know, we had a person in staff, and I won't say when, so you can't figure out who this is. But they would do this a lot in staff meetings. They'd be looking at their phones. And they weren't really taking notes because they weren't doing it. They were just looking at it. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to stop inviting them to meetings because you feel disrespected.
Yeah.
You're going, I'm talking about business here, and you're sitting there. I mean, you're visibly looking and reading messages, and it's disrespectful.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever sat in a restaurant and just observed
Oh.
the people that are in these? You know, it used to be you had conversation.
Yeah.
And now everybody's on their phone.
Yes.
They're not even talking.
Yeah. Well, what's also hard too is you'll be talking to somebody and it reminds you of something you saw and you want to bring it up, right? And you're like, oh, look at, hold on, let me find it. Oh, here it is. You know, and that's something that's been hard too, because I'll be having a conversation with somebody and they're sitting there and they're processing and they're processing and processing. And then they go, yeah, right. It reminds me of, and then you show it and you're like, oh, I got mad at you for no reason.
Yeah. Well, here on the podcast,
Right.
you know, you see me I'll pick up my phone, but we're looking up verses or something to remind somebody of something that they said.
100%.
So we're using it for business. But another one, and you've heard some of mine from the pulpit, but man, is slow traffic in the fast lane on the freeway.
Oh, especially
That
when you
just
gotta get
drives
somewhere.
me nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll tie you up for miles. They'll get beside a truck, they're going the same speed.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and it kind of resists. The other ones, and this is a big one of mine, people who take their phones into the gym and get on a machine that you want to use. And they're sitting there just going to town, looking at their phone. Now, I've learned something, and I'm bold now. If you've been on a machine for 3 or 4 minutes looking at your phone, I will go up and say, hey, excuse me, how many more sets do you have here?
Yep.
And you know what? Usually people are real nice going, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking. I just have one more.
Yeah, right.
I don't think too many people have not been real nice when I ask them that question. It's like they're dazing.
Yeah.
Now, when I take my phone to the gym, and if something important is text to me or whatever, I get off the machine, wipe it down, and walk over 5 foot and look at it.
Yeah.
And
that is one of my to the core pet peeves is when you're at the gym and you're like, you're supposed to be, you know that you need to get in and get out. And somebody is at the machine and they are in la la land. They're on their phone. I had a guy, and it's funny because yesterday, and it took everything inside of me just go, I'm going to walk away from this one. But he was on the leg machine, a squat rack, and there's not very many squat racks at gyms for whatever reason. Please, if you're a gym member, add squat racks to your gyms. But he was just there and he was tapping, like he's singing a song and he's tapping the bar and he's getting himself pumped up. Rah! And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. It took you 5 minutes just to even think about lifting. I'm like, I have to go. And you're like sitting here, you have a whole thing going on.
You feel like, and again, you all of a sudden you want to judge people going, you know what? I've got a life. Maybe you don't, but I've got a life. How about people that throw their towel in the machine and they'll go use another machine so they can tie up too?
Oh, those are fighting words. Those are fighting words.
Well, again, we're not just going to sit here and gripe.
No.
We're going to eventually get to what we want to say. But let me throw another one at you. And this has become a pet peeve of mine just recently. I don't like people invading my private space. Because of COVID, I don't like somebody getting 3 foot in my face or 2 foot to show me something on their phone. They're standing right here breathing on you, and you're going, man, can you just pull it up and hand the phone to me?
Sure.
And because, we've been trained now through COVID that you don't want anybody right there in your face breathing on you.
Yep.
And
where do you think the idea, why do these things bother us? I think that your most recent example, I think makes sense, right? You don't want to breathe in what they're exhaling. I get that. But as far as like the driving slow or the text messages while you're like, it stems from something.
Oh, of course.
I think a lot of us have schedules. And we're going, I really need to be here at a certain time. And because we don't live with margins, we need to go back to that. Margins are so important. Most of us are running by the wire when it comes to traffic.
Yep.
If we had margins and left 30 minutes early going, I expect this to happen.
Yeah.
I expect it. And then when it doesn't happen, you're going, wow.
Yeah.
So I think it's because we have schedules.
I think, yeah, and values too. I think what you value, like you're talking about, Tom, just about the phone, you get upset when people, and to you, it's a value thing. You don't value what I'm saying, right? You don't value my time at the gym when you're not moving on from the machine. You don't value when you're driving slow. You're not valuing the thing I value. And sometimes we think people should value the things
that you value
just as important. And they're not. They're in their own rhythm and their own world.
Yeah.
And we're probably all of us are in our own world most of the time.
They're
right?
retired. Yeah. They have all day to spend in the gym.
Yeah.
We're still working people, and we're going, man, I need to be out here in 40 minutes. And you know what? That's the only machine that works that body part. Yeah. And I really need, but again, if you just go up and say, excuse me, I really, usually people are really pretty cool.
Yeah, they are.
But here's another one. What about when you're sitting at a stop sign and the traffic's really, pretty heavy, and all of a sudden you see a break except for only one guy coming, and he doesn't put his turning signal on. He was going to turn the whole time.
Yeah.
And you go, now I got to wait here 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Or listening to somebody else's music.
Oh yeah, that stoplight.
That absolutely drives me crazy.
That sounds
we have
about right.
Parties. We have in our neighborhood. There's a lot of fiestas going on. Let's just say.
Okay.
And on Saturday nights, invariably, it's on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And there'll be a mariachi band. There'll be something out there.
Right.
And it's loud. And
and all night
I've
long.
had it. Yeah. And I've gotten to the point. Well, a couple of times, I took my life in my hands. Actually, I went over. It's about 1 a.m, and they were just going loud and loud. I had to be. I get to church around 5:30. Sometimes, and this was just thumping and thumping and thumping. I got so fed up. I walked into the backyard where they were having it.
Man.
I looked at the DJ and I said, "Turn it down."
And you're a really nice guy, by the way.
But
I can imagine you at 1 a.m. You would be scary. I would just have to say, just yelling over the fence, "You turn it down."
I didn't yell over the fence. I walked into the backyard.
Oh, nice.
That's crazy.
How about this one? I think this one, and you guys can all, so you get in a line in a restaurant, and it's one person in front of you, and it's one person, this is normal. And then they're ordering for 20 people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, you have to be kidding.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't call ahead. You're gonna order for 20 people right now.
And I think that one comes because you feel like you were taken advantage of. You were like, you're so ready to order your food. You're so ready to eat it. And this person seems like they're doing the right thing. And then you hear them, all right, here's my list.
Here's my list.
Boom, 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 boom.
Or
boom.
even another scenario there. I saw somebody the other day in front of me, and they were going, well, now what about that one? What kind of bread is that one?
yeah.
Okay, now what about this one? And they went through 10 different items asking all kinds of detailed questions. And I thought, why didn't you look at your menu before you came in here?
Yeah.
And this can disrupt your peace. It can ruin your day.
Yeah.
Another one, but let me go back to what John said. And I'm with him. This has happened to me before. I almost got beat up at a house one time because I went down as a teenage party, and they brought me out in the front yard. They're going to beat me up. But I was pretty wild. I was about 35 years old. My hair was sticking up all over, and I think he thought I was a little crazy.
Yeah.
But, and I know, again, it's a time to practice Christian values. Now, for example, I have to teach the next morning, and I realize I'm not going to be in my A game when they're keeping me up this late.
Yeah.
But I wonder what it would be like if we waited, and we got through it some way. Maybe, put earplugs in or whatever. And maybe let a day or two go by and just go knock on their door and say, hey, you know what? I brought you a cake today. I went by and I saw you had a big party the other day, or I brought you a pie, I had an extra pie left over. And say, can I just talk to you, man? In the future, could we come to some kind of agreement? I found out most people are pretty agreeable.
Yeah.
But like you, man, I'm mad at the nighttime when I'm losing my sleep. Another one. Now, this is one that I want our audience to hear. It's a little pet peeve, and it's not big, but I'll be out in public somewhere, and I'll be in a good mood, and I'll go along, and I almost bump into a lady. And I'll say, hi, I'm so sorry. I hope you have a good, and they won't talk to you. And I think among some ladies, I'm thinking that maybe they just don't talk to men in public, period, because they think you're going to try to pick up on you. And sometimes I found some ladies in the marketplace won't be nice in return when you say, good morning. They just look at you.
Right.
You're going to try to pick up on me. And you go, no, really? You're not even my style. I'm not trying to pick up on anybody.
Yeah.
That's nothing. But I'm thinking, can't we be kind to one another, and say good morning? And another one is asking nosy questions. Oh, that's a tough one with me. I was just wondering the other day, and I get these texts sometimes. I was wondering why you do this and why do you drive this car? And I was wondering why.
Yeah.
And of course, your first response wants to be, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
Right.
You always put the bless the heart on there, and that makes it easy.
Yeah, it makes it better.
How about sneeze? Here's somebody in the gym sneezing or coughing and not covering their face.
Oh, man.
Or here's a big one. Here's a big one. Telling me long stories or telling me about a movie using all the details. And I'm going, do I really care about all these details? I would like to hear about your movie and what you learned from it. But some people, they'll tell a story I could tell in a paragraph. They'll take 30 minutes to tell it. And I've got a bad habit. I don't know what it is, but when you sit at a table or somewhere and tell me that long story, I start almost dozing.
Yeah.
And my wife says, you can tell you're not interested.
Yep.
Yeah.
You start looking other directions in the restaurant. Your eyes are glazing over.
Something I've learned to do is when they begin to sidetrack and go a little bit too more detailed, I go, okay, so then how did that lead to this?
You're trying to help
Try to help them get back on.
That's the next pet peeve, interrupting people. That's the next pet peeve.
Yes.
And I'm bad at interrupting people.
There was a guy that used to be on staff years ago, and every time I talked to him, I couldn't get a word in edgewise. And finally, like if we were in a group and I was talking about something and right over everything I was saying, I'm thinking, well, what I'm saying is not important. So I actually would leave the conversation and go off.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
Can't stand that.
This, as I was looking at some pet peeves, I realized that I'm the instigator of some of these pet peeves. I do quite often with people that's close to me, I interrupt. And it's a combination of two things. Number one is I needed to get some business taken care of, but man, I am pressed in my schedule. I have to be out of here at a certain time. And another thing is caffeine. And I'm going to give you a little, what's the word I want to say? A solution beforehand. I'm trying to work through this pet peeve thing because I don't want to get a bad attitude. I really don't. And for example, because I know that sometimes in some situations I have this bad habit, if I'm on a time schedule or if you're telling me a long movie or a story that's just, I mean, come on, I don't need all the, I really do want to hear your story. And I really do want to hear what you learned. I really do. But I just don't have time for the long version. So when I'm going to a lunch appointment with somebody or whatever, on that day, try not to take caffeine because I realize that will cause me to become one of these interrupters if I'm not careful. And we'll talk about that near the end. But going back, saying you look tired. I've had people tell me that a lot. You just look tired. And I think, no, what you're really saying is I'm look old. I'm old. I know that. I don't want to hear that today. Correcting your grammar in a conversation.
Oh, man. My dad, I grew up. My dad was a superintendent of schools. He became a principal. He became a teacher. And my mom was a teacher. My grammar was corrected on a constant moment-to-moment basis in our home. And my dad, being a teacher and, old school, grew up during the Depression and all that. And just, it was constant. And I think because of my rebellious nature, I just went the other direction.
Yep.
Okay, if I can't say that, then I'll say this. Constant grammar correction, constant correction.
Yeah.
Because now I have a bad habit. When someone writes me, I subconsciously sometimes will correct the grammar in the paragraph.
That's why I hate texting you.
Not to them, though. Not to them.
I know you won't.
I never do it to them. Why do I do it? Because I want to stay in the practice of having better grammar myself. I've taken all kinds of college, university classes on grammar, and I still butcher it up pretty well. But what I'm saying is, I don't think I would ever correct somebody. I correct it in my mind just to keep practice.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will correct somebody if they're on staff or something. I'll say, you need to correct this before you send this out.
Right.
Because that makes us all look bad.
No, that's different.
different.
It's funny though, because you've gotten texting is text has become shorthand, right? And so you're in a hurry and you write things, and then you have autocorrect where you can just be typing. You typed it right, And all of a sudden autocorrect, it happened to us. It happened to me the other day in our group message, but I'm like, seriously? Like, and I have to go back and correct and be like, corrected this. But it's like, sometimes you're just trying to be up on your grammar and you're like, oh man, it's just, I sound like a fool on through text, but
it seems like a lot of these sources, though, have to do with time. You know, the more you think about, somebody who cuts you in line, or somebody who orders a lot in line, or traffic, or somebody who's telling you a long story, like going back to margins, like you were saying, it seems to be that we have unrealistic expectations of how long 24 hours is. And so we then tend to pack everything in, because maybe the phone allows us to get more done, so therefore we do the same with our schedule. But a lot of these pet peeves, the more I'm thinking about it, it's like, oh, that's actually
it's value,
something with me.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always think about when I start getting upset anymore about stuff people are doing that bugs me is I think I do that.
Yeah, there you go.
There are
Put
times
yourself
when
in the place.
I do that too. So I can't really throw a rock at you.
I'll give you one
doing
outside of time that for me, it bugs me. And it's like, sometimes I cannot help it. And you're going to know what you're going to be like. Yes, this is you, Pastor. You're going to identify with this. I have a loud voice, and it is complete. Like, it can travel just through bedrooms and piercing. I remember as a kid, I was hanging out with Josh, and I knew Pastor, he would have to be just to the tens of just like, that kid is so loud, because he would come in there and just be like, you guys need to keep it down. He would never address it to me, but he would just say, you guys need to keep it down. And for sure it was like, Josh had to know, like, hey, you're being a little bit loud. But I am just and when I get excited, then it's like, John's laughing. It'll just escalate where I can be in a restaurant. Everybody's just listening to me. It's like, this guy's telling a story.
Have you ever done that? You look around, everybody's looking at you, and you're
100%.
Oh no.
My wife. And one of my pet peeves is being shushed. I cannot. I don't know I start losing my mind if you shush me. I don't know why. I'm like, did you just shush me? Seriously? Like,
my wife tells me the same thing. She goes, you're whispering, but it's still loud.
It's still loud.
I'm doing the best
My
I
wife
can.
will shush me, and I'll look at her like, how dare you? Like, I am so excited, and you just killed all my excitement. But that one, I think, comes to just also feeling the, outside of time, like not being heard. Yeah. Like, I feel like you're like, really? Like, you're going to, so I think there's some of these that are outside of time that you're just like, you don't hear what I'm saying, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
pet peeves, it seems like they say more about who you are as a person rather than the people that are, that are doing them to you.
That's what's really convicting. Like, our audience, I hope you're listening right now and going, oh no, I do some of those things, because I do.
Yep.
I try to give a signal when I'm turning or whatever, but sometimes I get so consumed in my thoughts, I'm just not thinking. I'm sorry that I made you sit there for a long time. But another one, I was looking up a list of pet peeves, and this is one that's been used on me before, I'm sure. And that's, people say, micromanaging. Now, see, I have a lot of thoughts about micromanaging because I'm an employer and I'm looking from a different viewpoint than other people. Am I micromanaging you, or are you just doing a crappy job and you need to be looked over, It's always been a pet peeve of mine when an employee comes to, well, you're micromanaging me. And I said, no, you just do a crappy job. You're about to be fired. I'm trying to save your job is what I'm trying to do. But I can understand that micromanaging. If you're a good employee, you don't want somebody looking over your shoulder all the time. And so the list, I don't know if you looked up a list, but they're just all kinds of them. But again, when we put this podcast together, I thought, I don't want it to be just a gripe session. I really want to come about some solutions, because I don't like me when I become the pet peeve. And then, of course, with a person like me who tends to have a perfectionist personality, these pet peeves can become greater. Before we go on and start looking at some solutions and some things we're working on here, are there any more pet peeves that you have that the audience might identify with?
When you're in the grocery store and you're in that fast checkout line and it says like 15 items or less, and they clearly don't have 15 items. And they're breaking the rules. But also another one is,
don't get me started,
is when I'm in a plane and they finally get to the gate, and it's not time for everyone to leave yet, but everyone stands up.
Yep.
And they start crowding. The three seats behind you start getting in front of you. And you feel like, I'm in as much rush as you are.
Those are just a few off the top of my head.
If you don't get up, you just put your hand across the aisle and rest it on the seat beside you, so no one can get ahead. But they get pretty savage, man.
They do, because everyone is thinking the same thing, but their filter isn't working. It just drives me nuts.
Or driving down, you've got a wide road, You're driving down, all of us are driving down the center. They're going to turn right. Instead of getting over to turn right, they're going to slow down in front of you. And then they're going to turn right from the middle.
Or they'll tie up the fast lane for 10 miles, and they're going to make a right-hand turn all the time.
Yeah.
And why they couldn't have got over another lane, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just little things.
I think the self-checkout lane, I love it, like in Walmart and stuff. But when there has to be an employee that has to hover over you and then also like has to come and key everything in because, you know, like because it's a specialty item.
Yeah.
And then they have the goal, you walk out the door to stop you and check your receipt and line item everything that you're just bought. You're like, couldn't you have just got an attendance? So I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
A while back, I was in such a rush that it turned out being a testimony. God used it in a real crazy way. Someone ahead of me, they was looking at their total and they're going, oh, and I think I have enough. They were digging through their purse for change. I mean, I'm in a rush. I keep looking at my clock, you know, going, so finally I said, you know what? I feel led to pay for your, I'm going to pay for your deal. And I gave the money. And it turned out to be a great testimony.
That's cool.
But my heart wasn't right in it at all. My heart was wrong. I said, I'd rather pay the $30 and get out of here right now.
Yeah.
That's a hack, by the way, I think, for people. Now, if you're like, just start counting change and just hope the person behind you pays. If you see Pastor Ron behind you, that's your trick.
There you go.
Yeah. But now I've learned. And, you know, I when I am in a lane at the grocery store and it looks like either there's going to be a problem because they can't make their credit card work, or maybe they have to have a price check, on and on. I have learned these little secrets through the years. I'll grab magazines, a whole stack of them out of the deal, and start reading them so I don't have to buy them. Mm-hmm. And I'll even take pictures of the articles. I'll take my camera out and I'll take pictures of the articles so I can look it up when I get home.
Life hacks with Pastor Ron.
I utilize the time, you know. But real quickly, I want to live. I do. I'm always wanting to grow in every area, and I want to live above my pet peeve line, because I don't want a pet peeve ruining my day. I don't want them distracting my mind, define how I see people. I don't know how many times in my life I've been on this very godly train of thought, and I'm thinking about something. It's so cool. And they'll either get in the fast lane going slow, or they won't use their. Anyway, I get so upset about that I forgot what I was thinking about. Yeah. I lost all these thoughts, and God was talking to me. Yeah. I just don't want to live that way anymore. I want to try to be pleasing to God in every area. Yeah. So let's just start talking about some things that ministers to this area of pet peeves. Number one, is God ever testing us? Because the Bible says we're to be patient with all people. Mm-hmm. How many times are we actually being tested? In fact, let's just maybe leave this idea of pet peeves for a second. Do you ever see times in your life when weird things are happening, and you hear this voice saying, this is a test? Mm-hmm. Let me give you an example, and we've talked about this before. But during the COVID crisis, they were given bailout money. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think they offered us 400 and some thousand, between 400 and 500,000.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
And the bank said, you get this free. It's free. Mm-hmm. Free bailout money.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and they were preparing the bailout money for us. You can come and get it next month or whatever. And my wife and I began to have conversations going, I don't think we're supposed to take this bailout money. And I don't even know why. Well, the day the bank called us and said, hey, your money is ready, I said, I don't have peace about this. Debbie said, I don't either. And I said, you know what? I feel like right now God's saying he's going to use my book, Fire Starters. Let's go look at today's date and the devotion. And that date, it talked about the borrower being at the mercy of the lender. Mm-hmm. And obviously that was it. But going back, I thought, God, a lot of my friends in big churches, they took the money. They took 500, $1 million, whatever. We turned it down. And to this day, we see no good reason why we should have turned it down. But getting off of our train of thought here today and going down a side road for just a second, I felt like God said, maybe it wasn't God saying this, but I felt it was. He said that was a sheer test to see if you were obedient to me over and above taking $500,000 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so we'll bring it back to the topic here in a second, but God is testing us all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he says, there is no rhyme or reason for why I'm telling you to do this. I'm doing it just to see if you'll be faithful to me.
Yeah.
I'm doing it just to see if you'll be obedient.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Does God, you ever see God testing you?
I think baptism is one thing.
That's a good one.
That first step of obedience. The first time I came, to God, which I really hadn't done in my heart, but as soon as the subject of baptism, I don't need to do that. My heart wasn't his.
Why should I be dunked in some water?
Yeah,
Come on.
It didn't make sense.
Right.
So, it happened when I was a little kid. That's good enough.
Right.
But when I really gave my heart to God, and I said, I'll do anything you want me to do, the first thing that came up was baptism. And I won't go into it here, but there was a miraculous thing that happened that enabled me to be baptized.
John, I go back and forth because part of me really thinks that something in the spiritual realm really, really happens during baptism.
I agree 100%.
Something really happens.
Something happens.
And again, people are going to think this is crazy, but an acquaintance of mine shared the story in his church that one of his elders, he saw a vision during water baptism and saw these two men in white dress, slacks, or I don't know if they had robes on or whatever, but after someone was baptized, they came down and pulled a corpse out of the water. And I don't know, that might have been someone's vivid imagination. But let's say that nothing really does happen during water baptism in the spiritual realm. Is it possible, a remote possibility that God just says, you know what? I want you to be dunked in water. It has a symbolism. We know that.
Yeah.
But I'm just putting it out there to see if you'll do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will you be obedient? Do you have to have a logical explanation for all this stuff? When I say do it, just do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And but it is symbolic. We know all that. Don't send me a letter going, you don't know what water baptism is about. We know.
Yes, we do.
But I think there are, because there are moments where God is kind of putting some stuff in your path. My mom and I, we were talking about it today, and she had made a comment about being at a store, and she was looking for some shoes. And as she was getting towards the end of the aisle, there was an older lady who kind of made it clear that she wanted to come down the aisle, but it was a very narrow aisle. And so my mom was looking for some shoes. This was her size or whatever, needed to get to the end of the aisle. The old lady wasn't budging at all. And so she turned around and saw there was somebody else on the other end. And my mom just started to kind of almost lose it. She's like, you guys are going to really box me in. She then says to the younger gal behind her, says, excuse me, can I be let out? She goes, yes, absolutely. My mom's like, fine. What I'll do is I'll just go the long route. The old lady should have moved. As she came around to the aisle that was not hers, there on the shelf were the shoes that she was looking for in her size. And if not for that inconvenience and not losing her cool and not getting mad at the old lady, not getting, she was then able to come around the corner, and she said she's basically kind of accredited that to God, like, thank you for doing something, because I do think God cares about those little moments.
He does.
Yeah. I do think that
does.
it doesn't always have to be like a health scare. It doesn't have to be a car accident or a financial thing. It's those little moments of I'm still with you, guiding you, leading you.
Yeah.
I think the little steps of obedience are probably one of the most important things in our spiritual walk. Just the little tiny things.
Yeah.
I had a saying, I was cleaning up my phone yesterday, and it said, don't despise the day of little things, because someday you're going to look back and they were the big things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little things are big things.
One of the things, I was talking about the Walmart where they want to check your receipts, and my wife would be like, I would try to run by them if I could, that was kind of like my game plan.
Right.
And I started changing my mindset. It's like, I'm going to start talking to these people as they're checking, like, hey, how's your day going? Is it going crazy in here? And just treat them just with a lot of respect and smile back. And you just never know what they're going through. And that meaningful conversation saying, hey, like, I'm treating you like a person, because, they're asked to do a job and to be able to smile back. So all those things, the little things of being able to react.
Everyone
matters.
thinks what you think about that person. Everyone, 100%. They are the most hated person in Walmart.
Slowing me down. I want to get out of here.
I want to leave.
Yeah.
So the first one is maybe God's just testing us. He says, I'm going to let this pet peeve come into your life today to see if you won't grumble, to see, because he hates grumbling.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the second thing, and that is we have to practice godliness. How do you get good at something if you don't practice? How do you get good at being patient if you're not practicing patience?
Yeah.
And to practice patience, you have to come into a situation where it tries your patience. How do you get good at having a good attitude? How do you get good at not grumbling? So how often is God just saying, today I'm going to give you some chances to practice godliness?
Right.
Well, go ahead. No, I love your extraction into the first point, though, too, because you said one of your tests was picking up your book, which was Fire Starters, which I don't know how much you do, but how much you start your day is like really, or how you start your day is really, really important. Because a lot of times if you start your day in chaos and you're late to school and you don't have margins and you're not happy, and then all of a sudden that just completely translate to just where you're going, that the mood you're going to be in for the rest of the day. And practicing that godliness, like if you don't set your day up, if you don't spend that time in prayer in the morning, you don't spend that time in the Word, you don't have a fire starter, a lot of the times you're setting yourself up to probably be pretty upset for the rest of the day.
Well, that goes to the third point I was going to bring up is, we made a big deal through the years, and I forgot who brought this idea originally to my mind, but every day morning we need to get up and go, I expect to be bothered by some pet peeves today.
Yeah.
And because God has given me wisdom, I'm going to get prepared as much as I can. For example, again, when I'm traveling, it's just going to be automatic. And when somebody gets in the fast lane and wants to go slow, I'm going to have a hard time with that. But now what I do is I prepare some podcasts before I leave. And if I get into a podcast, I don't care how slow you're driving, man. I'm totally in that podcast. If I'm going to go to the doctor's office on a given day, I expect to sit there for an hour or two. Now, a lot of times I don't, and I'm pleasantly surprised. Going back again, I don't know if I said it. Whatever you expect, it messes with your peace.
Right.
In other words, if I leave my house going, I expect to be bothered by certain situations today. Yeah. Now, when they happen, I won't be bothered going, I expected them. But if you don't expect them, then they bother you.
Right.
It's like driving in LA.
Yes.
Every time I go to LA, I expect that I'm going to get into a traffic jam, and so
and doesn't bother you as much.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But if you don't expect it, that's when it really gets to you. So what about if we start, preparing ahead of time?
Yeah.
Like, for example, saying, I'm going to get a prayer list today, and I'm going to lay it out here in my car in big letters where I don't have to, take my eyes off the road. But I want to pray through every one of these before I get to where I'm going. This takes your mind off of the person in the fast lane going slow. I don't know. Do you have anything you can add to that? Things we can do on any given day in the morning to prepare ourselves for some things that are going to bother us.
I think just if you can remember that you are that person from time to time.
Yeah.
That you have been the person who might have been speeding or just in la la land while you're driving and you're going slow, and it's, as far as that goes, and it's not ever an ill intention, because going back to being at the gym and leaving your towel, you might have done that on accident.
That's true. And I've done that before, an accident.
Right. And you go back and you go, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Yes. And understanding, that we're not better than, anybody around us. Right. And cause it's a humbling situation to be in. But if you can remind yourself, Lord, I'm not better. Some days you feel that you are, some days you feel that you're better, or that you deserve better rather. But if you can, start your morning out, like you said, with margins or with a routine. I don't know if it's a human thing or just a male thing, but I drive my kids to school and we pray on the way to school. Some days have been harder than others. Right. But then today I'm driving and I'm like, okay, hey, we're going to pray. We just got done listening to a song that they like to listen to. And so I turned it off. I got a 2-year-old son, and he's kind of the little bit of a wilder one. But as soon as I said, okay, we're going to pray, they both said, okay. And they closed their eyes and they're ready to pray. But that's because of routine, of constant routine. And having that in your life can take that stress away, going just to a diaper bag. If you don't put any diapers in there or no wipes in there, you can only be mad at yourself that you didn't prepare for it. It's not anybody else's fault because your kid had a blowout.
100%. It's funny. We do these little off the mountain retreats, and on every side by side, there's a roll of toilet paper. And the guys are like, why are there toilet paper in here? I'm like, because you just don't, if you don't practice and be prepared, then you're going to set yourself for, like you said, the expectations equal your peace. Like you're not going to have as much peace if you don't prepare. The other thing too, is just like, coming into a mindset that you have a chance a cliche to make the world a better place. Like when you wake up in the morning, you're just like, I have the power to change the room. I have the power to change somebody's attitude. Instead of letting the pet peeve control your attitude, you have the power to be like, hey, do you need a little bit more time on this? Cool, I'll come back. Like you have the power to come in with the
We've
positive
done
attitude.
messages on that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm to be a thermostat,
Yeah.
not a
Yes.
thermometer.
Yes.
And we are called. In fact, the scripture says that we're to leave behind a pleasant aroma in all the places we go. And so today, I mean, if our audience, I mean, there's so many things I hope they get out of this podcast, but if they're out there going, wait a minute, I do that. So possibly I'm a pet peeve to other people.
Yeah.
We all want to strive to be our very best for God. And I think that brings me to another point, and that is we need to see this having to deal with pet peeves as part of our Christian discipleship curriculum.
Yeah.
God has called us to clean up from the inside out.
Yeah.
And I will no longer call leg boy, because God really convicted me. That is a fine way to describe somebody. Because you're not caring about leg boy's salvation. You're caring about leg boys taking up all the time on the leg machine.
Yeah.
And so we're in constant growth, aren't we? Seasons. And God wants us to examine our heart. And because I feel safe in my skin, I don't mind telling you that I struggle with some of these things. And of course, I'm amplifying them today. I mean, pet peeves are not a big part of my life, but they do happen occasionally. Because I had a big list here, I've just told you about pet peeves that I've had from time to time.
Right.
But they're not a big issue in my life. Some people think, man, this guy, what's he thinking about me? Because I really don't.
Right.
But I did think about all of them and write them down for this broadcast today. Let me throw another curve at you by giving you a point that might take us a little bit off of the topic. But the Bible says that we're to speak the truth in love to one another. And the Bible also says that in Matthew, that if we see a brother sin or a sister sin, we're to go to them in private and reprove them. My wife, a couple times, has really been used in my life by coming to me in love and saying, hey, you're being a pet peeve to somebody right now. You're being a pet peeve to me or whatever. And I've used this example before, but I went through a season years ago, and she said, man, you don't even act like you care about your kids on the phone. You're always just take care of business. Okay, yeah, well, we're going there. We'll eat there. That's the menu. You never ask them how they're doing. I don't hear you really, caring about them when you talk to them on the phone. And which I did care for them, but in short conversations, I didn't. Long story short, God used her. And I said, man, I've got to start doing better in these areas. Where do we allow other people to speak into our lives at?
That's so good.
And for example, take us aside and say, can I share something with you?
Yep.
You are so awesome in so many areas.
Yep.
I mean, you minister to me all the time, but you're doing something that kind of hurts me sometimes. And because I love you so much, can I bring that out? Where is that taking a role at in our Christian lives?
I think I want people to do that to me. I really do, because I don't want to be that point of offense to somebody or cause somebody to stumble in any way. I want them to do that. And, if they're doing that in love.
Yeah. Well, again, one of our staff members, and he's a brilliant guy. He's not with us anymore, but he's a brilliant guy. Still love him tremendously. I've used it before. I remember right where I was at when this happened. I was driving down 99, getting off of Ming Avenue, and I opened up a letter. It was in an envelope, and it said, Pastor Ron, private, personal. And an employee in a very loving way said, you know what, Pastor Ron, I love you. You're like family to me. But, you got on to me in the staff meeting in front of everybody the other day, and it really hurt me badly. And as I started reading the letter, I started weeping. My wife was driving, I weeping, going, oh my gosh, I did that. And he says, I know you didn't mean it. And he was so gracious. That's what even made it worse. But it just hurt me. And man, right then and there, I made up my mind, I'm never doing that again. And so even when we start out in a given day, is it part of our prayer life to say, God, I'm going to be tested in so many areas today. Please let me reflect the love of Christ.
Yeah.
And please help me not to judge people. So I don't know where you want to go.
I think we can. I want to keep going on that vein. So I think one of the things I was thinking about, we're in playoff mode, and you have all these great basketball players. And I was thinking about coaches. A lot of coaches get fired during the season, right? Because their teams lose, and the coach gets fired because their team didn't do good. But you would never say that those coaches aren't, they're better than the players. Like the players are much better at what they do, right? But the coach is the one that ends up getting fired. I was thinking about LeBron James, right? People say he's one of the greatest, one or two, however you feel about LeBron James, they say he's one of the best basketball players ever, but he still has a coach, right? And that coach is there to see things that he doesn't see while he's on the court. And so having coaches in our lives is as great as you think you are, as good as you are, you still need people in your life that you trust that can coach you and see things in you that you cannot see in yourself. Pastor Ron, it's been really cool. You called me. We had a conversation on Friday, and you said something to me. You said I was a novice at something, and this is good because I need you. So I got up the phone and I was like, okay, I got to take that. Like I'm a novice at that. And then I flipped it and I said, that's one of my life coaches. Okay, no. He meant I'm a rookie, and when you're a rookie, you're hungry and you got to go after something, and you want to go after it with all your heart. You haven't been there. You haven't been to the playoffs. You haven't been to the game, but you want it really bad and you want to get there. And until you get there, you won't know. And so taking things from a life coach, somebody that you can, and not looking at it from a bad point of view, but looking at it from this person has the best interest in mind for me. And being able to take it apart and say, okay, like I'm going to let that speak into my life is where we need to be. So with pet peeves, yes, we're going to have things that we don't see in ourselves. And you have to have people around you. Like you said, Tom, hey, Vince, you're on your phone a lot. When you talk to me, I'm like, when you were saying, I'm like, I am on my phone a lot. Like, so you have to let people speak into your life so that you can change the behavior, so that you can become the person that Christ is calling you to be.
I want to say that too.
Huge.
I remember that conversation. And before I said that, though, I talked about all the things you were excellent.
100%. Yeah,
you were excellent at this. Man, you are excellent at everything. But this one area, you're a novice. So you need to go back and learn at this one area.
And I wasn't saying that to say you can't. No. My point was like, I was able to take that and say, I have a coach where sometimes conversations are hard when you have conversations with people. And sometimes you don't want to see the thing, but you can grow if you let people speak into your life.
And if you know they're speaking out of love.
Yes.
100%.
What was that doctor show that was syndicated on the radio for years? Dr. Laura.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to sit and I was amazed. People would call in with these really crazy, sometimes dumb questions. And she would jump all over them going, you know what? You're rude in this there. You should do. And they say, oh, thank you, Dr. Laura. And I thought she just reamed them.
Beat them up.
And they said, thank you. But you know why? They knew it came out of love.
100%.
She was trying to help them.
Yep.
And so where do we allow people? And I know not everyone has earned that position. They've not earned that trust to do that.
Yeah.
But, for example, I had a guy in our church. He just really begged me some time ago. He said, would you do me a favor, please? You can say no, but I go back with you. We're real close to one another. Would you tell me an area that maybe I could get better in? And I didn't want to do it. And I said, I don't want to do that. No, please. I got thick skin. Tell me an area. You see me a lot.
Right.
And tell me an area I can improve in. So finally I told my wife, should I or shouldn't I? So finally I said, okay. I had sent him an area. I said, okay, thank you. Doggone if that guy in the next day start reaming me on everything he could think of. He was so mad. Oh, wow. He got mad. Thinking, you think you're perfect. I thought you invited me to do that.
Yeah.
But do we need to have a person or two in our life that we feel really close to and say, I'm giving you freedom to tell me when I'm being a pet peeve, somebody's pet peeve in a bad way? I don't know. Do we have thick enough skin to do that?
No.
My wife points stuff out to me.
Yeah.
And
same.
I think, man, I love it, when she does that.
Yeah, my wife does too. And I don't always like it. I'm going to disagree with you.
Say.
I don't always love it when she does it.
Right.
Well,
but I end up loving it going,
it's a beneficial thing.
Yeah.
Well, because even thinking about how, for the listeners that maybe they don't have somebody in their life, I think it's okay to sit back and watch. You Pastor, you've mentioned somebody as far as like a gym person. You're not going to listen to somebody who isn't built or has the physique that you want. So therefore, you're not going to get advice from them. But if there are people that are around you that you're like, you know what, I like the way that his family is, or I like the way that she does this or he does that, whatever it is. And then you sit back and you kind of watch them, and then from there you build that relationship, because there's a lot of people that will just, take any advice from anybody. Well, we don't know if that person has your best interest in mind. And so it is okay for you to sit back, watch somebody, and then maybe kind of build that, like, hey, can you show me how to do this, or somehow building up, because I'm sure there are listeners that are like, I don't even know who to go to be better. I don't have anybody,
right?
And so it's okay to sit back.
That's why getting plugged into a church is so important. If you're not here locally with us, getting partnered with a good local church, do your research, is important, because they will offer life groups, they will offer men's groups, women's groups, and that's where you're going to see people that you're going to grow with, and they'll be able to speak into your life in a way that you didn't imagine that somebody can speak into your life. Because
what about praying, Vince? What about praying?
Oh,
if you're somebody listening to the podcast today, or you're viewing it, saying, you know what, I'm going to start praying that God will move that person in my life.
100%.
And to show you how it has to come out of love, John, you might remember this. We used to have something called Afterglow years ago, and I've told this from the pulpit before, but we're all up there, and I'm going, you know what, is God talking to us? And if He is, just come on and voice out what you're hearing in your spirit. And a guy named Lenny went to our church, and he was down there. He said, I've got something to say. I said, what's that? He said, Pastor, sometimes you're very arrogant, and in your arrogance, you're hurting this church. And he went on for, it seemed like a lifetime. It's probably 1 minute or
right.
so.
Wow. When you're getting roasted in public.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so as soon as he voiced this, I said, okay, that's fine. Anybody else got another word? I just skipped right over. So when we got home, I told my wife, I said, can you believe what Lenny said? Can you believe it? He said I was arrogant and hurting the growth of this church, and he gave some examples, and she was quiet. And I go, did you hear what I said? She was quiet.
Oh, no.
And I said, what are you, do you have something to say about this? Well, you do come off arrogant sometimes. But she went on to say, I know you, I live with you. You're not an arrogant person.
Right.
But sometimes you come off that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, I could take it from her. I couldn't take it from Lenny.
Right.
Yeah.
But I could take it from my wife.
Right.
You have to earn that place of trust.
Yep.
But I think I would encourage our audience today, if you are in one of those places, as you mentioned, and you're at a place where I don't have anybody like that, you have not because you ask not.
Yeah.
Get involved in a church or ask God, say, please give me somebody that I could go to and ask to be my mentor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we all need that loving correction, because we all get off and we need to be brought back on
Yes.
by someone who will speak the truth to us in love.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I don't know where else you want to go with this. I mean,
I think I'll end to just with pet peeves. Don't give power to irrational behavior, in the sense of, sometimes we get worked up about something that isn't that big of a deal. Maybe somebody's doing something that is bothersome, or, it might be something that is driving us but don't give power to that thing. Because I think sometimes we amp it up in our mind more so than it needs to be. When somebody's taking too long at the gym or in line, or they cut in front of us, or whatever happens, we start giving it more power than it needs. And if we just take the power back and come to our senses and be like, okay, and we're able to smile. A lot of times my wife, even so, she'll maybe want to talk about something, and I can tell it wants to go into an argument, and I'll kind of start smiling, and she'll like, what are you smiling at? I'm like, is it a big deal though? And then she's like, I guess it's not. So it's like, and sometimes that backfires on me, by the way. I'm not, be careful if you're a husband out there and your wife's having a serious conversation, you start smiling. Yeah. That's not always the case. But, making sure you're not giving power to things that aren't that big of a deal.
Yeah, don't let it destroy your day and ruin your day. I've let it ruin my day too many times.
Me too.
In the years past. And I want to grow. But I thought of this right here. 1 Corinthians 13. Love is what? It's patient.
Yeah.
Oh, and it is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Love does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. I like this. Yeah. It's not easily angered. And it keeps no record of wrongs.
That's so good.
Yes.
No record. I want to grow. That's why we're having podcasts like this. I want people to see that we're all on a growth journey. And we're all searching our hearts. I don't know about you. This has come up in my prayer life numerous times the last month. God, please, I want to be good with you on the inside, not just the outside.
Yeah.
And I want you to continue to show me the areas that I'm wrong in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I want to become that authentic guy. And I've got a long ways to go. And so maybe I needed to talk about this pet peeve thing just for me today.
I think this is, when you said pet peeves, I was like, okay, this will be interesting. But as we talk about this, I think so many people are dealing with these little things, and they end up being bigger deals, and they it's just like you don't realize it.
It can destroy your day.
Yeah,
it can really destroy your day.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of here. Love you guys, and continue to write us. I'm getting some really good comments about the podcast. And you know what? We're going to get out of here. And so have a great weekend. And adios. We'll see you next week.
Love you guys.
In a hurricane, and it's bubbling over like sweet champagne. You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's